What's up, advocates? Welcome back to Equity with your host, Reginald A. Howard. Before we get into today's conversation, there was a lot of gems and jewels that was dropped, but I wanted to go in a little bit deeper on a few topics that came out of that conversation because it was very fruitful. And I think it's something that is needed and should be shared within the space. And so let's get right into it. Um, Jenny talked a huge deal about the United Kingdom Black experience and how it's similar to the African American experience. And I kind of wanted to go in a little bit deeper again with me saying I wanted to expand the platform. I think it's my job, or I know it's my job to do a due diligence of passing on along information that I receive because it's needed within the communities at large and just in the overall having these conversations. So I wanted to share a few informational tools that I've received over the years. Excuse me. And just some of the research that I do on my in my own time, just because I guess I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to that. But I feel like when you're really trying to achieve equity, and close these health disparities, you got to bring it, you can't do it alone. And the reason why some of us do it alone is because others may not have the information you have been privy to. And so in that sense, there's a lot of advocacy going on. I call you all my advocates. I don't have fans, I don't have supporters, I have advocates because we're all in this together. So let's get started. I want to share one of the articles that I looked up or was able to get in a conversation with myself with after I got Jenny on the platform. And it's about a community out in the United Kingdom called the Black Asian BAM. And I hope I'm saying it right. Please let me know if please correct me if I'm saying it wrong or give me more education around information. So BAM is the Black, Asian, and minority ethnic communities. And a lot of their information is on the website of mentalhealth.org.uk. And with BAM, they recognize that they recognize that not everyone likes the term BAM. It covers a wide range of people with diverse needs, and it can be problematic to put all those people into a single group. However, it can be useful to show that people who aren't white British can face specific issues and challenges because of their ethnicity. We use BAM, or they use BAM here as a shorthand term, but acknowledge people can find it's unsatisfying or prefer to use a different term to describe themselves. I liken that to some when people use the term black or the people use the term people of color. It can while it was created as a terminology to be inclusive, it also excludes certain people, and then it gets real murky in the waters when you start to try to analyze what specific needs we're focused on in that moment. So I appreciate that BAM, similar to what we have in the United States when we're trying to collectively come together and have and address certain issues, that this is being acknowledged within the culture in the UK. Um, and so when you talk about the similarities, it says are rates of mental ill health different for people from a band background? And so what the research shows is the rates of mental health problems can be higher for some band groups than for their white counterparts. For example, black men are more likely to have experienced a psychotic disorder in the last year than white men. And I'm trying to see if this is dated so we can have also the last updated information was September 30th, 2021. That's my wife's birthday. I don't know where we're going on that time, but so this was about an article that's about 2 years old, so it's relatively new. Black people are 4 times more likely to be detained under the Mental Health Act than white people. Other what's that? Older South Asian women are an at risk group for suicide. And then refugees and asylum seekers are more likely to experience mental health problems than the general population, including higher rates of depression, anxiety, and PTSD. And so I think that's really similar to what we have going on in here in America, where black men are what to say, it's 4 times more likely to be detained. And I think that is horrific because we have similar struggles over here within the United States. All right. So, what can affect the mental health of people from BAM communities, as well as the factors that can affect everyone's mental health? People from BAM communities may also contend with racism, inequality, and mental health stigma. So, we're going to dive in deeper a little bit to this. So, racism and discrimination. Racism can range from microaggressions, so those subtle but offensive comments, to explicit hurtful words, to verbal and physical aggression. Experiencing racism can be very stressful and negatively affect you over your overall health and mental health. I want to stop right there because one of the things, and I don't want to mention the organization by name, um, I remember getting started, and I'll stop to share one of the organizations that I started working for, and I was pivotal in the part of them creating a mental health group for that organization, specifically for Black mental health. And I remember that I was on good terms, for lack of better terms, with the organizer. And they stated to me that it was a big push against it, and them not wanting to create a good group specifically for Black people. And they didn't want to acknowledge and recognize the needs of individuals within the Black community as different, or I don't even want to say different, because they do support Black people, but they didn't feel like they wanted to single out or alienate. So when you talk about microaggressions and things of that nature, people won't blatantly say certain things to you that could be offensive, but there's those subtle things. And me seeing that, because and again, this is not to be divisive, but they had a group for the LGBTQI community, which was well deserving. They recognized and acknowledged that their needs weren't being met by the system at large, and so they created an opportunity for them to have their group to share their inequities and things that specifically are offensive to them, but for whatever reason that they didn't want to acknowledge what was going on in the Black community. So I find that real interesting that the UK has the similar experience when it comes to that, and how this is a global conversation that needs to be held because of institutional racism and institutionalized inequities that we don't even recognize. So getting back to the article, exposure to racism may increase your likelihood of experiencing mental health problems such as psychosis and depression. I can that's self-explanatory. If you experience now they're giving a tip, so they got great information if you feel like you've been experiencing racism. So with that is great. Shout out to BAM. Social and economic inequalities. You know, we about equity over here. People from BAM communities often face disadvantages in society. They are more likely to experience poverty and homelessness, do less well at school, be unemployed, be in contact with the criminal justice system, and face challenges accessing services. And each of these can increase the risk of developing mental health problems. So you already see right now all of these different things, experiencing poverty and homelessness. If you're in the American side, you already know. If you're in any major city, there's a lot of different homeless individuals in the center cities of each major city. Then we talk about poverty. You can also see in those cities that as much as there are rich neighborhoods or affluent neighborhoods, there are abandoned homes and things of that nature, doing less well in school, being unemployed, and all those different things, and being in contact with the criminal justice system. I'm glad that now that mental health is becoming a global conversation, we're doing more like the SOCIS is an organization that I've been fortunate to be connected to, and one of their slogans was mental illness is not a crime, or having mental illness, something along those natures, that it's not a crime. And I think once we start to have these type of conversation globally, then we'll start to really get to the disparities and how they can affect certain communities that they don't affect others. So mental health stigma. Mental health stigma, different communities understand and talk about mental health in different ways. again, y'all, we already 100 and something episodes in, and we breaking down certain barriers, and of course we rebranded, but it's still the same type of conversation. And if you look and backlog these certain episodes, you'll realize that we've been having these conversations in different ways that we didn't even acknowledge having as a mental health conversation. In some communities, mental health problems are rarely recognized or spoken about. They may be seen as shameful or embarrassing. This can discourage people from talking about their mental health and seeing their GP for help. What barriers can band people face when getting support? People from band backgrounds have the same right as everyone else to access mental health treatment and services. But research shows that banned people can face barriers to getting help, including not recognizing that they have a mental illness because mental health was stigmatized or never talked about in their community, not knowing that help is available or where to go to get help. I talk about that in my story vehemently. When I had suicide attempts, I didn't know where to get the information from, and when I went to go sort out the information, it wasn't anybody that looked like me when I went to interact with the system. Language barriers. There's a big problem here within the stateside that I didn't really even recognize as a global issue where um everyone doesn't speak English. Everyone doesn't speak that language. And for us to be the land of the free or the home for like inclusivity, and we're supposed to be a big melting pot, the fact that generally we only know one language is a crime because it just shows the lack of wanting to be inclusive when you're not taking the time out to actually understand it. And that don't mean you have to speak fluently a language, but just having those basic understandings can help a lot with getting support for someone. Turning to family, friends that rather than professional support, especially for people who don't trust formal healthcare service. There's a big distrust in communities all over who don't want to go to the healthcare system, and rightfully so. When you're not feeling like your needs are met, when you're feeling like people aren't listening to you or don't understand what you're going through, you'd rather go to a friend or family member than a person that probably does have credentials but doesn't have culture. So I understand that completely. Financial play barriers such as paying for private counseling. uh I'll say this, and I don't know about the United Kingdom experience, but over the years I've learned that providers can charge on a sliding scale. So if you are an individual who are looking for counseling, check the providers and see if they offer sliding scale. And it's basically what a sliding scale is, how much you can pay and how much they're willing to accept for you to do service for you. So please look into that. And then as far as like if you're working a job and you have benefits, you may be already paying for services for mental health. Not feeling listened to or understood by healthcare professionals. I just said that they have credentials, but they may not have culture. White professionals who do not understand the experience of racism and discrimination. I'm gonna say it one more time. They have credentials, but they don't have culture. All right. And so, last but not least, how can I find support that's right for me? As a band person, you have the right to mental health support just like everyone else. You may want support from and or from people of your ethnic background. If so, try one of the organizations listed below. And so they have these specific groups down here, which I'm going to do my best to get them on the platform because I want to have this global conversation about health equities, and just equity in general. So we talking about for the specific groups of people within BAM. And again, for those who didn't hear earlier, BAM is Black, Asian, and minority ethnic communities. And so you have the Black African and Asian Therapy Network. You got Black Minds Matter. You got Comar, which I think we have one here too as well in the stateside. Sharing Voices, Taraki, and a bunch of other references. So please, and they got the disclaimer. if you're feeling like you're ending your life or you're feeling unable to keep yourself safe, make sure you reach out to your local crisis center. But yeah, I appreciate this article. I think I had another one, more theoretic, so I'm going to stop share. But it sounds very familiar to what we have going on here stateside. So, I appreciate to know that the work is going global and knowing that it's not just a conversation that's being had in one space, it's being held all over. And so moving on to the next article and going a little bit deeper in that, this is for all my nerds like myself out there that want to go deeper into the research behind it. Um, Black and minority health and mental health in the UK, challenges and solutions. So this is by the National Library of Medicine, which is under the National Center of Biotechnology Information. And so shout out to you all and the researchers that went and completed and published this in November 2020. And they were talking about the current COVID-19 pandemic has brought into sharp focus the differential rates of morbidity and mortality in Black, Asian, and minority ethnic groups. That BAM, shout out to BAM, particularly in the United Kingdom. Furthermore, the multiple deaths, shootings, and murders of Black individuals in the United States have brought greater public attention onto this issue. These events, as well as subsequent campaign around the world on Black Lives Matter, have once again highlighted the number of differences across racial and ethnic divides. These have further been exacerbated by structural and institutional racism, which in turn has been activated by politicians made in countries such as the USA, UK, Hungary, uh, Brazil, and elsewhere. In many countries around the globe, minorities in general have faced and continue to experience tremendous discriminations in a number of fields, including education, employment, and health, including access to healthcare. High death rates among ethnic minorities due to COVID-19 in the UK have been attributed to a number of factors such as occupation, income, inequality, poverty, overcrowding, high ethnic density, pre-existing chronic physical condition, and other behavior factors such as smoking. So, UK experienced what we experienced it as well as with how the pandemic just separated and exposed all of the inequities that we were already facing, and now trying to get services, treatment, and all of these different things. It shined the light on it, and whereas they had to provide the stimulus checks and all those different things to help with jumpstarting certain communities because of the already inequitable systems that we were facing. So a majority, 86% of the population in England and Wales identify themselves as white, and the remaining are a part of the band community, which is Black, Asian, and minority ethnic, according to a 2011 census. And so going down within the article, another statistic, another notable statistic concerns the prison population, where it has been observed that Black, Asian, and minority groups are overrepresented, 24% compared with 14% um, than the white population. It's obvious that the effects of the incarceration will be experienced far beyond prison and jail walls, and impact upon the physical and mental health or not of not only prisoners but also of their families and dependents. Listen, I know I have a huge audience that listens to this podcast who are incarcerated. So just know your brothers in the UK are and shout out to you all. Let me make sure I make that clear too. Shout out to you all, because without you listening and people reaching out and showing me telling me how much this is getting them through their um getting through their bid. I was trying to find the former way of saying it, but getting through their bid, vacation. There we go. I always call it a vacation. Just telling me how much this is important to you getting through your vacation. I don't take it for granted. So I appreciate all your support, and I'm glad it's helping retraining, reframing your mindset and having these conversations so that way when you come out or when you come back from vacation, you're able to into the world in a different space. So shout out to you all. But just know that your brothers in the UK and overseas, this is a global issue that I'm going to do my best to try to impact in some capacity. Furthermore, prisoners face double jeopardy as they also show higher than expected rates of various psychiatric disorders, especially psychosis and certain physical illness such as hypertension and diabetes. In addition, after release from prison, their needs for housing, employment, and educational opportunities are very often not met. Thus, in order to deliver equity, there must be joined up thinking and planning between health, education, employment, justice, and other ministerial departments. So again, they're facing similar things that we have been facing all over the years and having these certain conversations around prison effect. And I think we get into this conversation as well with me and Jenny. We talked a bit briefly about how her just showing up in these certain capacities um really help her individuals that look like her feel recognized and seen in that capacity. So I'm trying to make sure there's nothing else that I want to. And the full article will be available for those who are interested in being able to check the numbers out. Again, I know this is not for everybody, and everybody won't feel as nerdy that I do about it. So I try to get this information and spit it back out to the community in a way that's more receivable. So I appreciate you all for going on this journey with me. Hold on, let me see if there's anything else that I want to pull. Oh, all right. Let's see. All right. So, given the discrimination is direct and indirect as well as institutional, there is a need for this to be tackled at both policy and practical levels. All right, so I'll tell y'all right now, like it's looking like to in order to help people, I really need to get in some type of like policy. I don't want to get in government. I don't want to get in those spaces, but in order to systematize change, you kind of got to get into the policy part of it. And I'm still struggling with that. I'm in the educational space of it, but to systematize it in a an other way, I'm not there yet, if I'm being frank. But therefore, such a body has to be responsible for keeping the elimination of ethnic in inequalities across all organizations under review. Developing research questions in conjunction with patient and community partnerships, rapid research strategy development, and application of such research to service development and outcome measurements is a must. It's a whole juggernaut out there that we need to put together. And I'm gonna make sure I highlight as I'm reading so you could kind of see where I'm at for those who are watching. For example, developing cultural competency training and service delivery with ongoing evaluation of improvement in service users' experiences and outcomes. Recognition and delivery of the resources to support health equity through setting up the respiratory of data reports and sharing examples of good clinical practice and working with researchers, policymakers, patients, their carers and families and other healthcare professionals has to a be at the heart of such an institution. We all got to work together, hands in the air, and use our gifts and talents and come together to be able to really solve this health inequities that's going on. And last but not least, such an organization must have a clear role to play at various levels in meeting the health and social care needs of BAM mentally ill offenders as well as prisoners, and thus in turn have a positive socio-economic effect on society as a whole by decreasing the likelihood of ending up in prisons where those needs cannot be met. Improved access to healthcare and improved health status will lead to improved opportunities for employment, housing, and family support, especially if cultural variations are embedded in such a rehabilitation process. Different countries will need to modify their functions according to their needs and should set tailored standards of for help for hospitals, training institutions, and regulatory bodies. As a minimum, they should meet the requisite standards as set out by the bodies such as the World Health Organization. Making progress against these major problems of inequities will require dedicated work for a long time, perhaps over a generation. Generational healing is going to take a generation to get to that space that we're all looking for. And we have to do our part in every way. Again, I may not be the policy guy coming in there, but I know I can do my part in some ways to really, to prevent this generational healing or protect and provide value for the generational healing. Moving into something a little lighter, that I wanted to discuss. Jenny, we talked about like food briefly within there and how it affect our mental health. And one of the things that I was talking to my wife about over the years about how like I'm changing my diet. We're changing our diet as a family, but a lot of our culture is tied to the conversations and food that we have with each other when it comes to things like holidays like Thanksgiving, um, Christmas, events like birthdays, even funerals. Everything is centered around food, and the foods that you eat may not be always the healthiest. And I know there's a systemic part to that where soul food was the scraps of what we got, and we had to make do with what we had to make do with because of slavery. But not realizing that it's causing us harm in the long term. And I think a lot of people speak on it, but I don't think we go into deep discussion about how much of our identity is attached to that, because if you lose that mac and cheese, you lose them ham hocks, you lose that essence of food, are you losing yourself within that as well? So I wanted to bring in an article that talked about that because it explains what I'm trying to say completely um a little better. So this was published in last year, April 2022. Shout out to Dahlia Cologne. um, I appreciate you for putting this together. For many African American culinary traditions come with healing powers. Let's not even talk about that. Granny used to put garlic, all these different things. Not garlic. What's the other? Ginger. She used to put ginger, all these different things within the food, and making sure like, hey, it got these different powers and these different things that can help you with sickness and all these different things. So we're not gonna talk about how much that is connected to the healing part. Now, am I disrespecting grandma because I don't want to eat that? I don't want to use that, and ginger is healthy or whatever the case may be, but I was just using that as an example. So going into the article, what we eat plays a big role in our physical health, but it can also be an essential part of our mental health. And um we don't think about it. Oh man, I had like a burger. I'm gonna be honest with you. I had a burger from Five Guys the other day, and that thing took about 3 days to get out of my system. And no lie, I can feel it like just in my system. I told White, I'm like, yeah, I gotta get either a junior or something, because I've been in this space of like again, conversations around mental health has been prevalent throughout like the community and people having it openly. So now I'm like, all right, I can't change my mind and start to adapt my mind to certain things and still physically be putting horrible things knowingly in my body. When you don't know, you don't know, and you can just continue to, harm yourself because you don't know. But once you expose the information, you have to go and do better uh with yourself and try to really get in shape. And so that's what my journey has been thus far. And so this was a radio episode or a podcast episode this week on the Just Podcast. Shout out to y'all, brings you something a bit different. Collards After Dark is an intimate evening of food and conversation that precedes the Tampa Bay Collard Green Festival. That seemed interesting. At this year's event, Um, Dahlia Cologne. Shout out to Vita Cologne. She correct me. I'm hoping I'm speaking that. I called her Colin, and I'm like, I felt embarrassed because he's like Cologne. So I think that's what that little asterisk over the O is. Dahlia facilitated a discussion about the healing power of African American culinary traditions between cultural um preservationist Gabrielle Carter and LaDonna Butler, a mental health counselor who holds a doctorate in counselor education and supervision. They also discuss seed keeping as a form of resistance and the ritual of drinking pot liquor, and much more. All right. It's going into what they are founders of. I'm trying to get into the meat and potatoes of it. um, Preservation looks like a lot of different ways for me, but seed keeping is at the heart of it all because without seeds, we don't have much. She noted that while her family wasn't financially and well-to-do, seeds have allowed them to enjoy a rich life for generation. There's all types of wealth. The preservation of seeds and fruit tradition is an important part for mental health in the Black community. Butler said, when we reflect on times of joy and times of sorrow, specifically in the African tradition, all of those things are surrounding the ritual of food. As we narrate who we are as a people, it's important that we're keeping those seeds, that we're tossing them into fertile ground. Um, I learned about my history and gained so much information around my identity from sitting in kitchens and being with my great uncle on the porch, shelling peas, shucking corn, in the garden. That's where I learned my history, and so all of that feels like a way to grab some joy. And the reason why I'm struggling a little bit, y'all, is because my screen is dark on the laptop because I don't want the reflection of my glasses. I already got the light. So that's why it's kind of hard for me to see. So my apologies for my inconsistencies in reading. But you hear how much history that is that you get. You talk with your elders, like you get to have conversation. I think one of the fortunate things that I have is that my grandmother was from the islands, and so a lot of the foods that um she would offer was like freshly um from the islands. It wasn't something that was like man-made, but I know over time that I still grew up in America, so a lot of the traditions and things that I was able to grab from family members was like unhealthy habits that was Americanized, and they always be like, "Hey, you eating this American BS, and this is why it's messing with you." So, um, again, I just wanted to put that out there, and with that, again, going into the research portion of it, um in the articles, this article by the National Library of Medicine again and National Center of Biotechnology and Information. um Perspectives on diet and physical activity among urban African Americans with serious mental illness. Individuals with serious mental illness are burdened by high rates of comorbid physical illnesses, such as these illnesses contribute to short lives with persons who have serious mental illnesses. Going more, the issues directly associated with the psychiatric conditions and their treatment contribute to obesity. Side effects of psychotropic medications, especially with metabolic effects on second generation and antipsychotic medications, increase the risk of weight gain. Psychiatric symptoms and treatments can affect diets, motivation, and energy levels that contribute to obesity among persons with serious mental illnesses. So this platform, all we've been talking about is getting individuals the help they need. I think I spoke on it before, being medicated and how it affected me and me not really wanting to do certain things. And this was why I stopped it. So when I stopped taking the medication, that didn't mean my mental health journey stopped. I had to find alternative ways, i.e., when I spoke on the gym earlier, being able to had those different tool sets in my tool belt to utilize once I got off the meds. But imagine a person that has to stay on it, it can contribute to obesity. if you don't, it can affect your diet and motivation and energy levels. So, um, good to know that in the research spaces of like why something can affect you. All right, so morbidity and mortality are often worse for persons of color. And I want to get a definition of morbidity because I think that has to do with death, but I want to be sure. So morbidity versus uh mortality. So morbidity refers to the illness or disease, and mortality refers to death. So yeah, y'all getting the education with me. As I get it, y'all get it. We on this journey of discovery together. So keep going. While results have varied from study to study, a review from a literature found that African Americans with serious mental illnesses appear to be at higher risk of weight gain and obesity than other ethnic groups. Going skimming through the article. Social determinants of health, such as economic factors and neighborhood environments, also contribute to obesity among African Americans with serious mental illnesses. Um, Environmental conditions in many low income. I'm making sure I didn't miss nothing. Environmental conditions in many low-income neighborhoods and communities of color present barriers to healthy diets through food deserts, and barriers to engaging in physical activity through decreased access to parks and community centers, and concerns about safety that hinder walking. Cultural factors are an additional social determinant related to obesity. Among African Americans, culture-related barriers include diet based on traditional culturally valued foods that are high in calories. Again, we just talked about that identity and a lot of those different things being tied into who you are and what you do in this world, and to strip you of some food that you ate so long ago, and how you were brought up on it, and to recognize it as something that was providing you, it was once providing you happiness, is now providing you illness, is a real culture shock. One of the ones I had recently was cereal. Well, not recently, but within the last 10 years, with cereal not being like real breakfast food. I'm like, and I was eating candy for breakfast. Like, this is crazy. Like, it still bothers me. Like, I have a disdain for cereal to this day, and I love it. I loved it. I haven't eaten it. I haven't eaten a bowl of cereal in at least 10 years, but it just like shocked me when I found out that it wasn't breakfast, because I have always been taught. And I guess it's certain types of cereal, but y'all know the ones that I'm talking about, Tricks and all those different ones. It was like, all right, that ain't really cereal. um all right, we read that already. So the study that we're going to go through is sought to understand the needs of African Americans with SMI living in Chicago, in order to tailor their weight management program to urban Americans with SMI, serious mental illnesses. All right, so they did groups. They utilized research from CBR. What else? Again, you all can read it. I just don't want to bore you with all the minute details. Uh, if you want to go through it, I do this for homework all the time, so um, I try to not overread if I don't have to, unless I'm getting a grade for it. Plus, I want to get you all into the episode with Jenny, because it's great conversation. All right. So the results from this is the results from their study, and the focus themes, and they learn. So they learn certain themes about health, weight, and diet, and within those themes, which are sub themes, they learned about health concerns related to weight, motivation to be healthy. So people don't even want the idea, they don't even have the energy to be healthy. Where people got their food from, and where people got their food from, and how they got their food. And then another thing that they learned was about the culture and health. And within the culture and health, they learned about health habits, spiritual influences, tight-knit communities, and positive characteristics. And then they learned about generational and age-related health differences, habits of youth. They learned about the habits of the youth and younger generations, and then the change in habits of older generations. So probably as you get older, I'm guessing, I haven't read this all the way through, you got a little bit wiser around your health. Barriers to healthy living, physical ability, so you may not just be able to get it. Traditions that affect health, we spoke on that already. Habits that affect health, food deserts, limited food options, poverty, lack of money, lack of time, exercise is boring. Readiness for change, and then they identify some solutions to those barriers, ways the community can improve their health, ways and individuals can address barriers. And so many participants cited weight as the cause of many health problems. Participants reported a history of diabetes, respiratory problems, and heart attacks, which they believe were the cause of the weight gain. Oh, were caused by weight gain. Some of those conditions are influenced. So some of these conditions influence the individual's ability to partake in those activities. A specific individual said, I can't play with grandkids the way I used to because my collagen and my knees rub together. I get home depressed and eat more. The participants also discuss sources of motivation that inspire them to eat healthy food and be physically active at times during their lives. Some discuss spirituality, transitioning from one faith to another. I never even thought about this. See why these articles important and getting real live feedback from the community. Um, Others talked about health related motivating factors. These include diagnosis of a physical illness and desire for better metabolism, heart health, reduced need for medication, or a longer life. One participant said, I wanted to live longer, and I knew that eating poorly and not exercising would hasten my time here on earth. Some participants said that they were self-motivated, while others said inspiration came from family, friends, and coaches. Another participant wanted to stay healthy for her children. I was able to play with them more. So that motivated me to exercise. Others were motivated by working out with a friend. Another person motivated me to exercise with them. It's easier with someone else too. So that external motivation is so key in your journey, because you need somebody, sometimes you need somebody else to motivate you, to get you to get up and actually want to get out there. So that's good too. That's great information. So if you're trying to change your habit, one of the things I learned was spirituality can change in religions if you choose to do so, but also getting someone else to help you motivate you. um Participants were also asked where they got their food. Most purchased their food from grocery stores. However, the fast food restaurants, dollar stores, and local gas stations were used as primary food sources for some participants due to their close proximity, or in the case of fast food, to minimize expenses money. At the times, participants visited food pantry. Sometimes I can't afford everything, so I do go to the pantry as long as I can eat. Participants discussed how they got their food. This included family and friends, providing reliable transportation, participation in the SNAP program, um, food stamps, and assistance from others while shopping or preparing food. One person fully dependent on a granddaughter who grocery shops, so she handles it. I don't do shopping anymore. Some individuals ate at restaurants and order food for delivery. Public transportation, which is like buses, trains, were commonly used for food shopping. These were often chosen when traveling far or even when seeking healthier food. Someone said I usually have to take public transport because that's the only thing in my area. Uh the Southwest is these tiny rip-off places. A few people walk when shopping locally, while only one participant mentioned driving to the store. So not many people have access to food and those ability to get to that space. So it's not only can the food is not available to you, you also don't know where to go or how to get there to go there. And sometimes carrying all those bags, I've been there with my mom before, carrying those bags on the bus is not always ideal. Um, and so how much we got left over here? Um, Implications. I'm just going to read those last four sections, and then we're going to move to the final topic before we get into the episode. And again, let me know how you feel about these informations, because to me I thought this may be boring for the audience, but I feel like it is my due diligence to provide this information as I gain it. So, African American culture and health. The impact of African American culture on health was discussed. Some healthy habits were described, such as growing fresh vegetables in gardens. When I was growing up, we had our own garden, our own squash, eggplant, corn, tomatoes, greens, and spinach. However, substantially more people discuss culture in relation to eating high fat foods. Participants said that fatty meals were a staple of African American upbringing, with many high fat foods passed down from generation to generation. Um, what we used to eat is how our mothers and grandmothers cooked. They cooked with a pound of butter and sugar and lard. They teach us to eat unhealthy. We're still doing it. I'll cook what my grandmas used to cook. Unconditioned, that's it's generational, it's passed down from, and you don't want to again disrespect grandma by not cooking what they cooked you. A lot of your identity is tied into that. This was echoed by another individual who noted that she feels her family the same way. Oh, she feeds her family the same way. The meals that our ancestors prepared from the South used a lot of fat, pork, and salt. I was raised on Southern fried chicken, fat back, collard greens, chitlins. So I bring that into my lifestyle. When I learned how to cook that, I brought it and fed it to my children. Others said that healthy eating was not part of their culture and was not even a source of humiliation. You don't want to embarrass by eating healthy in front of others. Oh, you don't want to be embarrassed by eating healthy in front of others. You look like a fool. That's a fact. Like you don't want to pour out the green shake at Thanksgiving. You don't want to pour out the. One of the things I have slipped in there is fish, but you don't want to pour out the salad like with the like. No, that's all I'm eating for Christmas dinner. I'm only eating the salad with the croutons for dinner. So it really is a collaborative process when you trying to change and getting everybody aboard on there. Advertising and targeting unhealthy food and alcohol to African Americans was discussed in the study. One individual thought the big corporations usually targeted minority and ethnic populations. There was also a concern that these companies were banding together to limit what they sold to African American neighborhoods. Oh man, I read a book a long time ago. I think it's called Salt, Sugar, and Fat. Let me make sure. Salt, Sugar, and Fat. And it just, if you get a chance to read it, it really does. Yep, that's it. Salt, sugar, and fat, and how the fast food companies get us. And it's just like amazing how it was like socially constructed by the food giants to get us hooked on it. And I think that's sad. So if you ever get a chance, go ahead and check that out. Salt, sugar, and fat. Spirituality was believed to put positively influence the health of African Americans. Some participants said that there are health benefits of being spiritual. I think that if you're spiritually fit, the more likely you are to eat healthy. The effect of spirituality on emotions was also discussed. You learn spiritual healing of the emotions because emotions cause me to eat. It helps me when I pray and look at a higher power to discipline me. When I attend my church, they talk a lot about the word of God that is helping me stay fit and emotionally. Filling a void in my life, spirituality helps me to discipline me. Participants voiced that African Americans have positive characteristics that can help them, including determination, endurance, and self motivation. One participant said, "I think we are very resilient and persistent. If one thing doesn't work, we'll always try to find another way." I do feel like we are very resilient people, and we know the history of slavery and racism and structural and institutionalized racism. We spoke on it earlier, and I do believe that we are very resilient. It's just going to take some time to culturally get the ideologies out of our system. And it may take generations to achieve that. Age-related and generational health differences. Participants in this study believe that there were differences in health habits across generations. many of whom were in their 50s said that the younger generation was believed to have a need to be instantly satisfied. They want everything to be quick right now. Older generations tend to cook meals while younger generations bought meals. Kids are raised to on fast foods these days. Back in the day, they wouldn't let us go to McDonald's every day. I always have this fight with my generational population. I don't think I think a lot of the times the generational gap is again lack of information. We don't realize how much what we're going experience at this time and the life is fast right now. Like everything is fast right now. There's nothing slow. So you had to be in 4 places at one time, 5 places where at one point how it was back in the day, dad would go to work uh all day and mom would stay home all day, and that was the way society was at that time. Now you don't have that luxury to be able to just be in that space. We all are on the go. Shoot, I'm gonna be on the go after this podcast. The show is over. Um so we all don't have the same obligations that we had back in the day. And everything has shifted. But if I wish they would ask a different question, and say, if you had the time to cook a home cooked meal, would you do it? And I promise you, and again, this is me um thinking off the cuff, that a lot of the mothers and parents would say, yes, I would love to cook my kids a home cooked meal and sit there and do that, but I just don't have the space and capacity to do it. Um, the other thing I'll say to that, and I think I lost my train of thought, when it comes to like different generations. Oh, chicken nuggets was what I was trying to think of. I remember um a colleague, I'll say, to not give reference to who I'm talking about. A colleague was talking about feeding their kids. They were judging other parents for feeding their kids chicken nuggets, and they like, when I have my kid, I'm never going to feed my kid chicken nuggets. Like I would never do that. Or give them the tablet or those different things. But of course, when you don't have kids, you don't know no better. So needless to say, I believe that that person is feeding their kids chicken nuggets now because they understand the severity it has when it comes to trying to warm up your kids and get things done. However, participants discovered, and in the study discovered, that describe youth as more physically active through dancing, working out at the gym, and participating in sports. Still, some older persons said that they exercise more now than they did in their youth. When I was younger, I didn't exercise because you're just enjoying life. But now, since I'm older, exercise means more to me. Another participant talked about an awareness of exercise's importance to health now, whereas children don't know any better. But at a certain age, you know the health risks. Others, however, said that they no longer exercise at all and describe a decrease in energy levels. Older generations have limited resources for exercising and opt to walk instead of going to the gym. What did I want to push back on that they don't know any better? I feel like when you're younger, you're more active. And you are more healthy, you're more involved in activities, whether it be sexual activities, sporting events outside. You're more involved in activities that make you and force you to be active. I look at my oldest son, and sometimes he just runs for no reason. There's a famous Cat Williams bit where his son, he like, what you thinking, what you doing, just running? And he thinking about running. I wish I had that clip to pull up, but I think we are a little bit more. I think it's all personality based, based on the individual. So that's kind of to provide some context to the study. The impact of changing times on eating was discussed in the study. Some focus group participants talked about how much food is processed today. Another participant talked about how today's youth are not exposed to gardening. One participant said that the fast food industry now advertises and sells unhealthy food. When did they sell healthy food? In addition, people have less time to cook these days, so people are pushed to cook less healthy food that is faster. And I agree with that. One thing I will say is, with the push of fast food, there has been push for other alternatives like Whole Foods and Trader Joe's and all of those different. Now they may not be accessible to certain demographics of people, but we do have those available as well that they didn't have back in the day. So I would like to bring that up. Lastly, some participants said that older generations have changed their eating habits for the better. Participants said that they were ignorant about healthy eating while growing up, but now that they knew better. Some participants reported that they omitted fried and greasy foods or cheese from their diet or ate to avoid feeling tired and bloated. I already told y'all about my my Five Guys burger and how it treated me the other day, so I'm definitely against it. But I agree with a lot of these different things. And I heard a trainer say about uh it's not about a diet, it's about a lifestyle. So you have to create a healthy lifestyle that fits you. My wife cooked some squash the other day, and I'm like, I'm not eating that. Like, you may want to eat that, but I need to enjoy some certain things. But that might be for her. Like, and I just found, but I did go to the gym where she like, I don't really do the gym. So you just gotta find a lifestyle that works and benefits for you because it may not be for everyone. Um, Barriers to healthy living. Participants identify cultural customs within the African community that are barriers to healthy lifestyle, creating difficulty in breaking old habits. Growing up eating certain things, it's hard to break some habits and traditions. We talked about that already. These customs include growing up eating certain foods or certain kinds of meals, familiarity with Southern foods, and participating in Sunday dinners. Because pork was affordable when participants were growing up, it has remained a staple of the African American community. One participant said that social gatherings are characterized by fried chicken, ribs, the usual. Fried meals, soul food, comfort food, and food preparation contribute to unhealthy eating habits. Yeah, we spoke on it earlier and how it's just a part of you. And I can only imagine having like, can you imagine being the one that's in control of like family dinner for that year and you pull out all of these healthy foods and healthy options? You know how disappointed they'll be so mad at you that the event is canceled at this point. They're not coming in and having these conversations or nothing, like where you just got all this greenery and all these different things on the table. Christmas is over. Christmas is canceled at this point. Eating because of temptation, the influence of others, and enjoyments of high fat and high sugar items were discussed as impediments to healthy eating. Despite understanding the importance of eating healthy, unhealthy foods were chosen. The temptation, I can see fruits or chips, and I will want the bad stuff. I know I have to eat healthy, but I don't want the bad foods to curb my appetite to be content. Guilty. I'm guilty of all of this. Others spoke of a distaste for healthy food. I don't like veggies, so I don't buy them. Simple. I don't care for them. I won't eat them. I don't like the taste. I'll eat greens, but no veggies. And healthy food is nasty. The taste, most of it look nasty. I don't like asparagus, tofu, none of that garbage. But I also think so. Someone told me it's a few things I gotta get off. So with that, um, I just was having a conversation with my wife about how just growing up we just ate a certain type of way, and we can't be so harsh on my kids. So because some of my greatest experiences came from eating chips or certain things, little Debbie's from my childhood. And now I don't want to rob my kids from those experiences just because of the unhealthiness of them. There's a lot of things in life that we do that is unhealthy. But that don't mean we should uh just not eat them at all, if you get what I mean. Like, you should just have it's a balance. Everything is a balance, because if you work out too hard in the gym, you can hurt yourself. But if you rest too much without going to the gym, you can hurt yourself. So just creating that balance. And we don't want to rob our kids. And I was just explaining to her, as long as we have the healthy options available, our sons eat oranges, apples, grapes, berries, all those different things. Now those vegetables are on the sweeter side, but they do eat them. Also, if I buy my drinks, my fruit drinks or healthy drinks, they'll drink those too. So I think it's all about preparation and integrating it slowly but surely, as opposed to just trying to go on something cold turkey that you have never experienced. Um, and then the other part of that is I was talking to a colleague, and they were explaining to me that they're vegetarian. I'm like, I hope to get there one day. And she was saying like, hey, she didn't say it's not for everyone. What did she say? She said that have you ever tried tofu? And I was like, nah, I just don't like the way it tastes, or whatever the case may be. She said the thing is with tofu, or a lot of the healthier option, it's all in the preparation. You wouldn't just eat um raw, like ground beef, ground chicken, or any of those different things raw. And a lot of times people try to offer tofu in a raw format where you don't do nothing to it. She said if you prepare like you would prepare something else that you were trying to eat, and treat it like a regular meat and prepare it in that way, then you may have a better experience with it. And I walked away with that, realizing like, I can utilize that. I can utilize that to my benefit. Now I still don't like turkey. I'm with my man's. He said, or whoever said this, healthy food is nasty. The taste, most of it look nasty. I don't like asparagus, tofu, none of that garbage. I'm witty when he talking about that. But I think I'll try it slowly but surely to integrate it within my food routine, because I know how much of a benefit it is. All right, so food deserts were a barrier to good health. Many participants said that healthy options were not close by, and that fast food and unhealthy foods were readily available. The places that are in the neighborhood, they aren't healthy for us. Greasy ribs, then there's the donut shop next to it, and the corner stores and the liquor stores, but not much food. As noted earlier, fast food restaurants, dollar stores, and local gas stations were frequented by some participants due to their close proximity, or minimize expenditure. And all of those were my primary sources, as well as a grocery store. But yes, those are my primary sources where I used to get my groceries. Still do to this day a little bit as well. Not as much, but still do. To obtain healthy food, many participants said they had to travel. This is a fact. One participant noted that a grocery store was nearby, but fast food was widely available and still the norm. In my neighborhood, there are fast food places all over the block. We do have a grocery store, but people still go to the fast food places. That's a fact. Before I got to my grocery store, was a Burger King, a McDonald's, a Checkers, all in the same facility, two gas stations, a Dunkin' Donuts, a $2 stores, a beer distributor. This is crazy as I say it out loud. But it was all there before I actually got close enough to the market, and even getting to the market. I'm about to take the travel. It was a pizza store right there, a corner store, another beer store. Um, and then I was at the spot. So you see how much I had to even get to that spot, and that's not even I wasn't even the worst of worst places. The prices of felt healthy food also hindered participants. Healthy foods cost way more than junk. I can't buy the healthy food. You have to have $180, so you have to eat to you have $180, so you have to eat what you want, what you can buy. Another participant said it's expensive to eat healthy. Cheese, lettuce. Most black people don't have money to buy all that. So most black will just buy salami and that's it. Participants said that they bought fresh fruit and frozen vegetables when they had extra money to spend. Joining the gym was also described as prohibitively expensive. This is a fact. Um, Lack of time added to the barrier of being healthy. I said that earlier when they were talking about young people. Making a salad or cooking was time consuming, but buying junk food and eating it is so easy, one individual said. Microwave dinners are convenient to me. I don't always have time. Making time for exercise was also difficult. You have to look for a job, get on the internet, go to the library, do all of those different things. I feel whoever's saying this. The majority of participants blame themselves for failure to adopt healthy behaviors. Participants said that laziness, procrastination, and unwillingness to change were barriers to healthy habits. I like veggies, but but they'll just sit in my freezer forever. I can eat junk food and I'm too lazy to make vegetables. Another participant said, I do want to exercise more, but when that day comes, it's like, I'll do double the next day or something like that. Only people said that fatigue, taking medications, and physical illness prevented them from being physically active. And I would like to add to that, just looking at that study, um, I think that it's generational habits. You don't know what it look like. Like my son now probably sees me go to the gym. I wake up 4:30 in the morning to go to the gym, and he probably sees that now that becomes ingrained in his system of it's possible. A lot of the times when we don't see it, then we can't believe it, and it's something that seems far-fetched. And so I don't like to say that it's laziness, procrastination, and don't willing. I really put it off as um we just don't have the capacity in our minds yet. We have to build the new train of thoughts. Our brains are like balls of information where we have to create the neural pathways to breaking the and mind you, to include and do something new, you got to unlearn something else in that same time. And I don't think people realize the impact on that and how much it plays. Participant solution to all those barriers. All right, so let's go to the solutions. Solution to those barriers. Participants believe that the community should be involved in improving health. Most participants felt communities could help improve. Let me go back. Most participants felt communities could help improve health by having more affordable fresh fruits and vegetables that last longer and a wide variety of food and meat products. If we get a store for our community, we can get what we really need. Some said that stores should advertise healthy food and connote nutritional values and health risks associated with nutrition. Participants said that African American communities lack education on diet and nutrition, and therefore healthy eating education was needed. Participants said that having someone provide healthy eating education available at stores would be helpful for the African American community. Assistance with meal planning, the service of a dietitian, and even pamphlets and brochures could be helpful. They also discussed the need for resources to assist with physical activity. They mentioned the desire for a personal trainer. They voiced that more and better quality fitness centers, equipment, and affordable memberships will be beneficial. And then they said centers for teenagers that offer basketball, skating, and bowling could help them become less sedentary and are needed because parks are unsafe due to shootings, drug sales, and loitering. Lastly, the participants offered strategies that individuals could use to lose weight. They suggested pairing with a friend for support. Like when you go out late at night, we could do the same thing for your health. We can keep each other accountable and reach out like, are you eating celery? Are you eating cake? Other discuss smart shopping, including developing grocery lists, looking for sales, and getting the best deals. Wow. Now they straight on point with all that. They actually go into my last point as we before we get into the episode, and this may come out in two parts. As I was thinking about it, because that was pretty long. About education being the key to prevention, and I'll end off with this. Because again, we were talking about Jenny and some of the different things with the UK and how they translate with us. But when we talk about education, again, me learning about equity and inequities is why I shift the name of the platform, because I realized that that was the basis of different things that was affecting us. So this is an article by nationalacademies.org. Let's see if there's the National Academy of excuse me, the National Academy of Sciences. This was from 2008, so shout out to you all. All right, so health equity is when everyone has the opportunity to attain their full health potential. Inequities in health stem from structural inequities, the systematic disadvantage of one social group compared to other social groups. Deeply embedded in the fabric of society, encompassing policy, law, governance, and culture. Health inequities are a large part of historic and ongoing poverty, structural racism, and discrimination, and they can be the policies and community action. All right, so what is the role of education in community? The education equals the health link. There is extensive research indicating a link between educational attainment, years of school, or number and the degrees attained, and health indicators, which means life expectancies and death from disease. The effect is even intergenerational, meaning the education of parents is linked to their educations and the children's health and well-being. So what do all that mean? If your parents don't know, the parents can't teach you what they don't know. And if they give you information, you're better to utilize. I think I spoke earlier, or I know I spoke earlier, my son watching me do certain things. I think that'll help with his health in the long term. Disparities in education mirror disparities in health. Over the last 40 years in all regions of the United States, the gap in health, specifically in life expectancy between people with high and low educations, has become wider. And if you're watching um, on YouTube or wherever you're seeing this clip, you can see the disparities between education and health and how it looks. So improving education can improve health in a number of ways. Educational attainment increases health knowledge, literacy, coping, and problem solving skills, thereby influencing health behaviors. Education shapes employment opportunities and related benefits such as income, another determinant of health. And I feel like that's going to be a topic. Social determinants of health will be one of the topics coming up. Education affects social and physiological factors such as like efficacy and social supports. So as educational attainment, when you get the knowledge and the literacy and behaviors, you start to learn about nutrition, exercise, drug and alcohols, and health and disease management, which equals health. Educational attainment leads to work. And when you work, you get better working conditions related when you let me see pathways through which education can affect health. When you work, you can worry about the working conditions, work related resources, and income. So if your working conditions is good, it's not good. It's exposure to hazards, control slash demand imbalance, and stress, which can be a determinant of how your health outcome is. Also, when you have work related resources such as insurance, sick leave, retirement benefits, and other preventative, that leads to a healthy outcome. And then lastly, when it comes to work, when you got money, you get better housing, neighborhood environment, nutrition, and your stress levels are down, which is again equal to health. Lastly, when you get education around health, you feel a sense of control, which is work can be work related factors, health related benefits, behaviors, and stress. Again, equals to health. Your social standing can increase. So yeah, you got more resources, and social dynamics to tap into, which can contribute to your health as well as stress. You're probably less stressful if you have a high social standard. And then lastly, social support. So when you have a social support after getting the education, you have social and economic resources, health related behaviors. You got stability within your families, and last but not least, your stress is relieved. And stress within all of these, which again contributes to your health. Educational attainment is a predictor of health and can affect health outcomes depending on the level of attainment. Policies and practices proven to increase the academic performance and reduce education disparities are important to reducing health disparities. Also, education outcomes are substantially affected by health. Students who have unimagined health conditions or live in conditions that contribute to hunger or chronic stress may have trouble performing in school. Let's see. I seen an article that I wanted to like, so I may save this for another time. All right. So last but not least, um, leveraging education policy, and I said it earlier that education, um, I would have to get into politics to do that. So, what can the education sector do to promote health equity? The U.S. Department of Health can support states, localities, and their community partners with evidence and technical assistance on the impact of quality early childhood programs and interventions. the state departments of education can provide guidance to schools on how to conduct assessments of student health needs and of their school health and wellness environment. Schools and school districts can take action to improve health and well-being of students, leveraging existing policies and programs like physical activity or air quality. And in conclusion, the education sector is a key partner in promoting health equity, working to tackle unemployment, concentrated poverty, and school dropout rates can seem overwhelming to communities, but when the actors in the community, such as the residents, business owners, state and local government, and local institutions can work together across multiple sectors and communities, they can have the power to change the narrative and promote health equity through enduring community-driven interventions. That's it. Listen, now this may come out in two parts, but I just wanted to dive deeper on a few of these subjects. Let me know your thoughts. We put a lot of research and educational information out there. So please let me know your thoughts, and shout out again to all the researchers that I used today. Link to the articles will be in the description, and this may come out in two parts because this was a lot longer than I was expecting, but this is good because we just provide information. I hope you enjoyed the episode with Jenny O. She provided a great, just story and background. Let me know your thoughts. Now, I know every time we come on, I say it's a very special guest, so I won't minimize this conversation by saying that this is when I say in episode 100, I said I wanted to have a global impact on mental health, especially from the Black experience. So this is one of the first. This is one of the first conversations, and I'm proud to have this individual on. I don't introduce anybody because I don't want to misrepresent or miss a credential, miss something you worked hard for and achieved in your life. So please introduce yourself to the people.
Yeah, no worries. So my name is Jenny Okolo. I'm based in the UK, London. I am an occupational therapist by trade. I work specifically in psychiatry, forensic psychiatry, so working with individuals who have various mental health problems, and additionally have some sort of involvement in the criminal justice system. I am also a podcaster as well, like yourself. And I'm also a public speaker. So I've done tons of public speaking engagements in schools, in hospitals, organizations. I've just recently wrapped up on my TED Talk as well, which you guys should check out. So that was in conjunction with the NHS, which in the UK is our national healthcare service. That in a nutshell is me.
Yes. So y'all can see that this is a very unique individual in the things and breadth of things that she does as a person to help our community in regards to mental health. Now again, that's why I don't have questions, Jenny, because I never know where the conversation is gonna go. I'm in school now, right? And one of the classes I took was forensic behavioral health. I just recently took it, it was forensic behavioral health. And so I didn't know the mindset when it comes to criminality and how you're not even realizing that there's a thought process that come behind that. So what got you into that field? Was where like, why did you choose that specific area when it comes to like mental health when you start doing the work?
Yeah, so I first heard about it during my training. So in the UK, as an occupational therapist, you study for 3 years. Within that, they send you out on placement. So it's like field work for a couple months or a couple of weeks or whatever. And I remember my final placement was at Broadmoor Hospital. So Broadmoor is one of our highest security maximum hospitals in the UK. It's where they sort of keep those who are very, very mentally unwell, who are treatment resistant, and those who have committed horrendous crimes, essentially. So I remember walking through the massive gate. So you can imagine there's lots of security and everything. And I'm just there with my little backpack walking through, just like, oh my gosh, how is this experience going to be like? And it was my final one. So I wanted to pass. Like, this was not going to ruin it for me. So I walked in and went through the checks and everything. And I remember like meeting with my my supervisor at the time. And I remember just as I kept on going, walking through the halls and just seeing the different buildings, I was pleasant. I was so surprised because from what the media obviously portrays around, like, you know, psychiatric hospitals, secure hospitals, it's not often in a positive light, right? But when I went in there, they had a whole recovery college, they had a rehabilitation suite. So it wasn't what I expected. And it almost like humbled me in a sense, to a point where it allowed me to see things from a different point of view. It allowed me to understand that not everything is linear. So just because a person commits a crime, it's not just black and white. Usually there are reasons behind it. It doesn't justify the crime, but it helps us understand, you know, that's where the psychology comes in. It helps us understand what led them to that point. So yeah, I was just very curious about how these patients' minds worked. Those who had, you know, diagnosis of schizophrenia, for example, those who had neurodevelopmental disorders such as autism or ADHD, on top of, you know, whatever psychological issues they might have, those who've come from poor economical backgrounds. And it just made me, yeah, I think it was just out of curiosity and, you know, just wanting to see how I could play my part, especially as a Black woman, because, you know, whilst I was impressed by the facilities that were there were a lot of people that looked like me. Hence, as in, like, there were a lot of, because it was a men's hospital, it was majority Black men who were there. So again, you know, I just found myself in a position where I thought, you know what, it, as sad as it is, I'm happy that I'm in the position to support, and that, you know, patients can see somebody that, you know, looks like them and that can relate to them to a certain extent. So yeah, that's how I started my work in mental health. I worked in a psychiatric hospital for many years. I worked in a community as well. I just recently finished working at a prison, as well. And again, all these different placements, they gave me a different perspective from different angles. And a lot of my, I remember, and probably still to this day, but initially a lot of my friends and family, they said, Jennifer, are you mad? Like, are you actually mad? Why are you trying to get yourself in this? But again, I was once in their shoes as well, where I only saw things black and white. And it's not to say that it's everybody's responsibility to sort of, you know, play their part, but at least having empathy and wanting to understand, like, you know, not agree, but understand how somebody who maybe was very articulate, very intelligent, just went down the wrong path. And you'll find that, you know, a lot of the individuals, they've had underlying health issues, mental health issues, but, you know, I'm sure we'll talk upon that later on, especially within the Black communities. Only, I would say, maybe now, but even then it's not as prevalent that mental health is being taken seriously. So yeah, that's sort of how I got into it. And so yeah, I was just very intrigued. And I just wanted to see how I could play my part.
Excuse me. No, this is great because again, I just took that class, and one of the things that they say in therapy in general, but also just as a helper and healer, is that you have to put your biases aside. Because I'm like, how can you treat a child molester, or how can you treat someone who, you know, is a murderer, or whoever the case may be, they committed some type of crime. And I've always been a big component in, instead of and this may cause some ruffles, but instead of just sending people to jail because they committed crime, like understanding the mindset behind why they committed the crime, and so that way we can maybe do more preventative than we do reactionary, trying to like just, I'm going to penalize you. Like, this could have been prevented with the proper nurture and support and help in that favor. And so to hear that you were in that experience, I want to understand, like, what was the transition for you? Like you said, family and friends, like, yo, are you crazy? Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you even entering in this field? Like, these are like the bottom of the barrel type of people to deal with almost. Like, what was that transition like for you when you had to, you know, I don't want to say wake up, but like look at things from a different perspective, and like, you know what, these are still human beings and I want to
Yeah.
help support them in a way.
Yeah, I think initially, and even, you know, from time to time, depending on what the crime is. And as you've mentioned, some of the offenses, they range from petty crimes to more serious, high profile crimes. I still have that moral conflict within myself, just naturally. But, like I said, it's not necessarily about justifying the crime. It's more about understanding the reasons. And I think once people can differentiate, because I think it's also to do with how you compartmentalize things as well. So when I'm working with somebody who's committed a very serious offense, I have to bear that in mind, because obviously there are risks involved. But I do have to sort of put that aside and treat them as a patient, because if we can't get to the bottom of why they did this, and this is obviously in a case where we might see somebody who presents with delusional disorder. They see things that aren't there. They think that they're paranoid. Like there's certain obvious sort of symptoms that you can sort of see. So if it's in that case, then I'm able to see that person just as a patient purely. And I think because usually what happens is that, and I think that this is how I was able to overcome that hurdle. I've seen, just through my practice as well, people at the other end. I've seen somebody who's been arrested, committed a horrendous crime. During that crime, he was psychotic, could not remember what had happened, but he knew he committed a crime, got treated, went for the right rehabilitation, had a team around him, and is now on the other side where he's, able to work and live life as meaningful as possible. And of course, it's remorseful. So I would always say, and this goes back to whether, the issue where mental health is still not seen as a clinical, of course it is, but in most cultures and, society as well, it's not often seen as a clinical issue. It's just seen as, oh no, they can control themselves. That's fine. Like, yes, some people can control themselves, but the reason why we have a lot of these crimes where we can't even understand how it's come to this point is because a lot of people are walking around untreated. They're walking around harboring, abuse or traumatic disorder or PTSD that they're covering up until something triggers them and they explode. So I think once I realized that, and I realized that it's a lot more complex than just saying, oh, this person committed a crime, they should just go to jail and that's it. That's what made me want to even be a part of this more, because I believe that the key to ending this cycle of violence is not just punishment, it's understanding, and it's trying to, I would say it's trying to capture the moments before they can even commit the crime. So I always say that part of the work I do within prisons or hospitals, that's only a small part of it. Teachers, people in the community, they can all play a part in this journey. It's all part of the puzzle. Yes, we can treat people in hospitals and in prisons, but there's no use in doing that if the same situation is still happening in schools where teachers are unable to identify if somebody maybe has a neurodevelopmental disorder. And this is something that I mentioned in my talk as well. Like, according to the Prison Reform Trust in the UK, a lot of criminals have an undiagnosed disorder of ASD or ADHD. And the reason why they go undiagnosed is because, for example, in schools, they are seen as aggressive, lazy, instead of, oh, actually, there might be something there. Let's take this child for an assessment. Let's see how we can best support them. And of course, if they're going throughout their lives undiagnosed, it's gonna, once they get older, they start to commit bigger crimes, So yeah, I think it's just understanding that there's a whole purpose for me to try and do as much as I can in an area where it's most misunderstood. And just like I said, see how I can play my part. And my friends and family, I think the more I start to talk to them about it, the more that they understand what it is. Especially, here in the UK, was talking more about mental health, more males as well talking about mental health, especially Black mental health as well. So I think as the conversations are piling up and more people are finding out about it, I think we have more empathy for those who, not even empathy, but more understanding and curiosity. I think that's key. Being curious, that's all you need. Just to ask yourself, oh, okay, I know this happened, but what could have led to that moment? That's literally all you need. So yeah, I think it's definitely been a growing thing, and I understand, of course, there are risks to it. Like I'm not going to sit here and lie. Yes, there are incidences, and you go through the training, but things still happen. So yeah, that's how it's sort of been. I think it's almost bonfire night. That's why you can hear the fireworks.
No, no worries. I understand it. And if you need to hit mute or whatever, it's fine.
Uh-huh.
One of the things you spoke on earlier that, again, with me not knowing the UK culture around like Black mental health, and again, I told before we spoke off air, I'm like, that's one of my goals. Like I've kind of like gathered some perspective on like mental health in the African American perspective. Of course, not all the nuances, but I kind of see some of the similarities in that perspective, and still will continue to have individuals on to share their story. But I'm also noticing that there's a relatability within other cultures, other communities like the UK, and it's a shared experience. So when you said that, when you see brothers in jail, it's still brothers that look like me. They just in a different country. You get what I mean? And so, talk about what that. I don't want to say what that could be, but like, why is that like universal? And we're not even walking the same paths almost. Like, what is that in your knowledge and expertise of why that is still continued in all these different places across the globe?
Um, Institutional racism, unconscious and conscious bias as well towards Black men and women. Um, in terms of police brutality, I'm sure you've probably heard the news. There's a lot of unlawful injustice happening in the UK, especially when it pertains to the Black community. And then hence why, you get more Black men, Black women arrested. And hence why I see more of them in prison as well. And also ethnic minority people too. So, I think it all, like I said, it all boils down to institutional racism. So that's not just in the community, but also in schools, in the workplace, in, when you're just out and about in shops. And I think, yeah, I think it's sad that we're still in this situation. And like I said, when I look around at work and I see people in terms of prisoners, or even in hospital, to be honest, psychiatric hospitals, and I see a lot of them that are Black or of ethnic minority in there, I'm like, I feel sad, but I'm not surprised, because like I said, and I'll speak for myself, like in the African community, I'm from Nigeria, like it's still not something that is spoken about. And if it is, it's like, oh, no, you can get over it. Or if you've got somebody, a family member, who's presenting a psychotic, for example, it's like, oh no, this is witchcraft, or this, and it's like, come on now. And I guess I can speak from this perspective because I live here and I've gone through the training. I know what kind of treatment you have for symptom or people that present like this. But I think, yeah, because families, especially like those who you spent the most time with, they can also be part of identifying if there is something wrong. Now, compared to, let's say, our white counterparts, where they have more knowledge, they have more language in terms of how to describe their mental health or how to get access to certain services. We don't tend to have much of that. And if we do, we're not believed. And it goes back to saying that at every stage of somebody's life, from when they are little to when they become an adult, there's so many missed opportunities in terms of how all of this could be avoided. And because we live in a society that we live in where there isn't equal opportunity in terms of all the races, there isn't equal access in terms of access to education about mental health, access to education around health and well-being just in general. This is why you still see the same cycle. I'm meeting with patients families who I still have to tell them the basics of what mental health is. I still have to tell them the basics, let alone the complex, what kind of medication they're on or what kind of treatment their son or daughter is, what we're recommending for them. And it's because they're not able to get that elsewhere. So I think those are the main key features. But in terms of why it's so globally, why it's the same, essentially, is it's still there. It hasn't left. It's just, like I said, it's institutional. It's filtrated in spaces that aren't just blatant racism, but it's in spaces where we get healthcare, where we study, where we work, and it's something that we're still sort of figuring out as a country. Like I said, there are so many organizations that we have here that are trying to speak up, but it's obviously not enough. And unfortunately, I don't want to say it's too late, but some things have progressed for the worse, and hence why certain people are in prison, for example. But then that's, like I said, that's why I feel like I have the privilege of being a qualified therapist, and being a Black woman, because I can go into these settings, and first off, without me having to say anything, like, you can already see the relief on their face when they see me in the boardroom or the ward room, where the psychiatrist, the psychologist, which the higher up you go, the whiter it is, basically. And they can see at least I've got somebody who could be on my side, because they look like me, or they'll be able to understand where I'm coming from.
You spoke on a lot, and I know I only got you for a short amount of time, so I want to make sure I can get as much as I can, because again, that Nigerian experience, I want to get into that. And then you just said the higher you go, the wider it goes, you climb it, and so and then you spoke on the internalized, like, systematic. So I'm throwing them out there, so just in case I forget, or if you want to answer those type of things in that way while I ask the questions, please feel free to do so, because I want to maximize the use of the time. But the question I'll lead off with, because you said it, in regards to, because again, I started collecting all these credentials, right? And so I was like, all right, one of the things I got to do is I have to finish my degree, so that way I can climb that ladder to, like you said, show up in those spaces, because they won't hear me unless I'm coming. I just did a group yesterday where I went into the community. It was a private community, of course, but just instantly before I said a word, they're checking me as a man, like, do you know where I'm coming from? Do you know where, before they even listen to anything I'm saying first, I gotta make sure I'm sharing that experience, that shared experience of, all right, now I'm relatable. And so now they're more open into the hearing and listening to whatever skills or techniques I'm giving to offer. And so when you talk about internally, as far as like how it's like systematic and it's internalized within the system, I always think, like, can it really be fixed, changed, or like corrected if it's so embedded in our culture, in our community? And I mean in both ways, like the mindset of, like you said, like certain families, it's hard to get that mindset out the families. And then I think about the system, it's almost hard to get that mindset out the system. And so it's almost like a world war bombing that has to happen for it to like just rebuild from the bottom. So from your perspective, your expertise, what can be really actually done when it's almost like an overwhelming thought process from both ends?
Yeah, I don't know if it can be fixed, let's say in our generation. The first thing I thought about was trauma, psychological trauma, and how it's passed down generation to generation. Usually, like, those before us, like our parents, older family members, they've experienced their own trauma, which obviously dictates and shapes the way that they react to certain things. So, for example, mental health, I'm not in any shape or form putting the onus or blame on them, because they only know what they know. And it's hard to change that sort of mindset, you know, when you're so used to something, or when mental health wasn't necessarily something at the forefront. You were more concerned around surviving. That was the main concern. So I think as the generations go, like, you know, yourself and me, who we are educated in terms of mental health, we're educated in terms of how we can contribute to society in a positive way. We're speaking up more. You know, yes, there is, you know, certain things that, you know, continue to happen regardless of whether we speak out or not. But I think our generation, we're such a good position where our voices are, they have so much power now. Hence why I say that, you know, we can make progress. Will it be fixed? I think it's going to be a hard thing, because we are up against a massive battle. Like you said, in terms of institutional racism where it's almost like racism where you can't even see it. You can't even see it hitting you. You're blindsided by it, you know, especially when it comes to the healthcare industry, where you rely on, here we, you know, we get free healthcare, so we rely on healthcare, and if that means we're treated in certain ways, people will still take it because that's all they've got. So I think we will, hopefully, as the generations, you know, continue, and as, you know, people like yourself and me, we find ourselves in higher positions, we find ourselves in rooms where decisions are being made, rooms where we can put our foot down and say, no, this isn't right. That's how we'll be able to make those changes. I don't think it's a quick fix, because like I said, there is so much that we're up against. There's so much that's happening in terms of police brutality, in terms of, you know, institutional racism, conscious and unconscious bias, poverty. We were talking about, like, we've got several places, so many places in the UK where, you know, young Black and ethnic minority children, you know, they're struggling. And I think I would be unrealistic to say that we'll be able to sort of fix that straight away. But I think the little things that we're doing, and like I said, playing your part in whichever position you're coming from, like what you're doing with the podcast, or in terms of my work, educating yourself. Education is so key, because if you don't know, you don't know. And I think that's the one thing that, you know, our white counterparts have over us. They have the education, you know. So that's another area that I'm very keen on, you know, sharing my expertise. I go into schools, I go into communities, and I tell them, this is what ADHD is, this is what autism is, this is what schizophrenia is, telling them or this is what depression is, and not just telling them, and telling them where they can get the resources. Or if somebody says, because it happens, certain health professionals, they completely dismiss them, or belittle their cries for help, I'll tell them, okay, these are the rights that you have. So I think in me playing my part in these different areas is contributing to making that massive change. And I think if everyone had that same sort of mindset, we can definitely go far, and hopefully in generations and generations to come, we will see less of these situations happening.
Yeah, no, and you speak so well with the education piece, because I'm finding more and more, again, like I said, I was just at a group yesterday, and it's the fact that we don't have the language to connect it to. Like, we're smart people. Like, we know how to figure things out. We know how to do certain things, but when you don't have the institutionalized version of that type of education, then people will make you seem like you don't know what you're talking about, or those different things. And so it's so key, like you said, getting the education and getting the language. And you spoke on healthcare. I'm learning more and more about that now, and learning the different barriers and things of that nature that is contributing to our mental health and things of that. And it's just like a whole nother battle in itself. But I wanted to get before we get into the work that you're doing, because I see it's so much. Like I want to get into it and share so people can follow it and subscribe and join the movement as well. I want to ask about this Nigerian experience. Well, you're a Nigerian woman. I'm a first generation American, so my family's from the island of Antigua, Antigua and Barbuda. And one of the things I realized, or not even I realized, what I'm realizing, there's a luxury when it comes to like third world countries and mental health. Like we can't afford certain things, like almost in the same similar notion of what you said about healthcare, where if this is the only thing that I have, then I can't, be too, flexible with it. So
Yeah.
in third world countries where if this is the only environment that I have available to me, I can't even afford to think about or treating or, managing my mental health, because look at my environment, look at the certain things that's going on. And so the mindset, what have you noticed becoming a clinician or becoming a mental health professional, and then the Nigerian experience that you grew up in, and how they are, I don't want to say clashing, but almost differentiate from each other? Because it's like, I've gotten awakened about, I'll use something simple as like food and learning how that affects your mental health, whereas food was a big part of like community and culture, and we eat these certain foods, but they are harming us, they are harming our thinking, they're harming that way. But that when you start to say, all right, I'm going to use an American holiday, when you start to say, hey, I'm going to eat a green shake for Thanksgiving, your family's going to look at you like you're crazy, like, why aren't you indulging in all of this unhealthy thing? So just talk about that, like the Nigerian culture, and then now being a mental health professional, and how they may clash because certain things that we normalize as culture may be offensive to us as humans.
Yeah. I think so, especially in the workplace. Well, actually, first of all, growing up, my parents, I guess they were kind of strict, but because I was raised in in the UK, I was privy to how, so for example, how teachers would engage with like the younger kids, and they, I don't want to say be more gentle, but there was more about like, oh, are you okay, and this petting stuff that I wasn't necessarily used to. So then, like, when I started working in mental health, again, I had to make that conscious decision, even when I was talking to individuals, to separate the fact that, okay, hey, this is what I was brought up with, and this is what is textbook. But then also at the same time, because mental health now is becoming such a, I don't even like to say such a huge thing, because it should have always been a thing, and it was always a thing. But because it is becoming more spoken about, and people are, I think, paying attention to how our brain works, how different people react to different things, it's made me sort of just look back and see my parents, see my family in a different way. Like certain behaviors that they did could have been because of how they've experienced life in, back in Nigeria. So, for example, PTSD, right? So initially, in terms of PTSD, I thought it's only people that go to the army that necessarily experience PTSD, or people who go through visible like traumatic events. I never necessarily considered the fact that our parents could still have PTSD but have been covering it up, whether that's consciously or unconsciously, for so many years. So when I'm at work and I'm meeting like patients who come from different backgrounds, by the way, I'm able to understand why. And I think that's where I have the privilege as well of understanding where a person is coming from and looking at them holistically. We can't use the same example for everyone else. And unfortunately, during my training, it's like, so I have there's this guy in the UK, he's written this book on different skin types, and especially for Black people, because as a doctor, you don't necessarily get taught from a Black perspective. You get taught from a white, or if something happens, there'll be like a red rash. it doesn't necessarily, our skin types are very different. And it's been the same like in my own training when I was doing the mental health module. There was nothing in regards to culture and how that can impact a person and their mental health. There was nothing like even things like, so I'm an occupational therapist, so we use occupation in terms of therapy, right? And I remember I had a patient who, he got so agitated and they were about to restrain him. And when I asked him, what's wrong? Like, why are you behaving like this? He started talking about they wouldn't let me have my own shampoo. And he showed me the shampoo the hair shampoo that they've given him. It was for white people. And I remember talking to the psychiatrist and I said, hey guys, I just want to let you know that this is a black man. He's not going to be able to use the shampoo. And they changed it. But it's only because I knew.
He was the voice, yeah.
I knew, and it shouldn't be that way, because how is it that I know everything to do with white people, and how they present, but it's not the same for us? It's in terms of our culture, in terms of our mannerisms, in terms of even certain symptoms, like an aggressive white man is seen very different to an aggressive black man, and both of them could be experiencing the same psychosis, but one is seen as more dangerous. So I think, I've had to, and I'll be honest, there's been times where, and this is how I feel I've been able to move up. There's been certain things where I know I can't make that change. So I have to keep going. And I have to keep putting myself in spaces where I may not always be able to be a voice for somebody, but I'm able to make notes so that the next time when I do get to that position, I'm able to implement certain changes. And that is just the reality for a lot of us Black people, where sometimes we find ourselves in the right rooms, but we're still not able to use our voices because usually we're the only one, or there are certain repercussions for speaking. So I think whilst I am Nigerian, and I'm proud of being a Nigerian, there's certain mentalities of a Nigerian that don't always complement the field that I'm in. And it's obviously it's a different type of culture, and they only know what they know, and I'm very aware of that. And I think it's a thing where it all comes back to education. We need to keep educating our elders. We need to keep educating people on different cultures from across the whole world. And that's the only way we're able to be as inclusive as possible. I wouldn't say that our healthcare system is fully inclusive. Otherwise, there wouldn't be all these problems. But I think even talking to my parents about mental health, and they're able to say, oh, actually, that your uncle, I think he might be schizophrenic. And I'm like, where did you learn that from? What have you been listening to me? But it just gives me so much joy, like obviously not the diagnosis, but it gives me so much joy that they're able to see another perspective as to why somebody might be behaving the way they are. And that is what we want to see, and that is what progress is. It's slow progress, but nevertheless it's something.
Yeah, no, and you said a lot. I need that contact of the brother with the skin, the book and learning.
Yes.
I want that. Remember we talked.
Yeah.
I need that contact information, because I would love to have his perspective. And then speaking of workplace and like climbing the corporate ladder, you're doing your part in a way to climb it and help support in companies as well. So
wow.
So talk about the career site that you built exclusively for women.
Yes. So it started off as a project at university, and I wanted to create a platform where people would talk about their career experiences without being so fluffy about it. Like, tell me the real deal. Tell me the times you got fired. Tell me the times you applied for 100 jobs and you only got 2 interviews and you didn't even get through to the next round. Like, I wanted a platform that could be unfiltered. So that's how it started. And yeah, I guess everybody felt the same. And that's how the community grew. I had more people wanting to talk about their experiences or wanting to be part of our events. Um, so it's been going on for about, I want to say 6 years now. But more recently, we are going to start having more of a focus on neurodiversity in the workplace and mental health in the workplace. Because I find that with all of my expertise, I definitely want to give back in settings that people are already in. And especially, like I said, I use me being a Black woman as a privilege because I'm able to go into these workplaces where there's a minority of Black women or Black men and talk to them about neurodiversity, talk to them about mental health. And they're able to see that, hey, this is a person with extensive specialist experience in this area, but also she's Black. Um, so yeah, it's something that I've been running for years, and so far so good. Obviously, during the pandemic, we had to sort of pause on our events. But by the end of the year, there will be a slight revamp because, like I said, we'll have a focus on neurodiversity and mental health in the workplace.
You do a lot of work, and I don't even know how you have time for the amount of things that you do, and so salute to you. I just want to give you your flowers while you are here in this space, because I know it's not easy to do the things that you do and manage all the different times that you have to be available and stuff like that. So I just want to give you your flowers on that.
Thank you so much. And like yourself, like I said earlier on, I think it's great that you've created this platform where you bring in people, you have conversations that are as important, and also from a global perspective as well. Because like you said, like there are certain things that we share, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on what side you look at it from. So yeah, thank you so much for allowing me to be on your platform and to share some of my experiences.
Talk to me about She's in the Pod.
Oh my goodness, She's in the Pod. So that is the podcast that I'm a part of, and it's the three of us. We started off as friends, and again, we talk about all things women empowerment, being a Black woman, and a Black British woman. We're also in different career paths as well, so bringing that career aspect into it too. We've been going on for about 4 years now. We've had events, and yeah, it's just, again, it's a chance for us to be as unfiltered as possible. And just it's something that I wish I had when I was a lot younger. Just seeing Black women not necessarily at the peak of their careers, but in the process, on their journey. And I think that is what's missing, and that's what's needed the most. Like, we live in a society where people are and good for them, like they're getting successful super quick, everything is fast paced, you're barely really learning the journey. And obviously everybody puts their best foot forward, so they're not going to show you when they're down. And so I think we need more people who are more transparent about their journeys, and that's what we've tried to implement in our podcast.
Make sure y'all go subscribe. I'll put the link to everything that Jenny has going on. The last thing I was going to talk about, and we covered a lot during this conversation, and it went in many spaces. Again, that's why I don't have no questions. I hope it was good for you.
Yeah.
So I don't have any questions. Is there any? You can keep it short, because I think I'm gonna add a loaded question with this. Is there any differences you see from the UK perspective versus the USA perspective in regards to mental health, or any lasting perspectives that you've noticed from your end, seeing it from the outside view, that you just like want any impression you want to get out there to the people?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were a lot of similarities in terms, and maybe it's because I'm in the space, so I'm seeing it from a perspective. I'm already looking out for, mental health initiatives and things like that. But as with anything, I think the US and the UK, whilst we have our similarities, I think in the way it's presented, the UK can, again, in terms of some of the issues that we face here, it's not as heavily spoken about, unfortunately. And I could sit here and say, oh, we've got a lot of organizations to do with mental health, Black mental health here, but because we're not as big as America as well, and perhaps our platforms may not reach the wider world all the time, there are a lot of things that can be missed. But I think that's why it's important for that cross collaboration to happen, because at the end of the day, we do experience very similar things. And if we don't, it's a chance to learn from one another. It's a chance to educate one another as well, in order to progress, because I'm sure there's things that we can learn from you. There's things that you can learn from us. Whilst it's a different lived experiences, I won't say that it's ever the same. We can definitely learn from each other. So yeah, I think, I can only speak from the UK. We do have a lot going on, but we do have a lot that doesn't reach that forefront. And I think that's one of the issues that we have here. There is some sort of like glass ceiling that we've got here.
Nah, and I think I got the perfect solution. We'll talk offline about it. I recognize that, and I'm trying to do my part over to like do that. We'll talk about it though.
Yeah.
On that note, please make sure y'all share this episode with someone. Share a comment that Jenny made on the Apple podcast. Like share a quote. Like, hey, look, this if y'all listening to this episode, I love when she dropped this jewel or this gem. Or if you sharing this podcast and episode, please let them know which part you like. And make sure you subscribe on all platforms and letting people know like this is one of your favorite episodes. And last but not least, always remember that this platform has never been about being a replacement to therapy. It's an alternative place where people share therapeutic stories. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much.